Now is the time and place for a public hearing. Would the clerk please read the short title?
Yes, Madam President, this is a public hearing for relative to the Syracuse Police Reform and Reinvention Collaboration Plan pursuant to Governor Cuomo's Executive Order number 203 of 2020. Public hearing will be held on Thursday, February 18th, 2021 at 5 p.m. via WebEx.
Thank you. And we are going to take our speakers in the order that they've come in. And we're going to allow 3 minutes for each speaker. You will be timed. And after the 3 minutes, I'm gonna have to take your time from you. So the first speaker is going to be Colette Matthews Carter. Pastor Carter?
It doesn't appear he's on yet.
Okay. I am going to move on to Raynette Relaford. Raynette, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, afternoon, everyone. Thank you for providing us with the opportunity to speak as it relates to this draft plan. We would like to acknowledge the fact that we were involved on the county level through President Hudson and the subcommittee related to this, related to the county's plan, and provided adequate documentation related to that. We wanted to acknowledge that the CRB had previously provided recommendations related to the draft policy for the body-worn camera policy and the use of force policy that we have previously sent over to the council and also to the police department. We are requesting that those recommendations be implemented into the draft policy. And if anyone needs another copy of that, those recommendations, we'll be happy to provide it. We note that in this plan, it does talk about providing dash cameras inside of the police vehicles. That has been a CRB recommendation for quite some time. And we also recommended audio mics to be also implemented into the patrol vehicle. So we would like to reiterate those requests as part of the plan as well. We also have previously recommended the disciplinary matrix be included and implemented by SPD, and we believe that that would also be a great addition to this reinvention and reimagining as it relates to the police department. So in the CRB's legislation, it talks about the conciliation process, which is an opportunity for the community to have a form of mediation to allow members of the community, when they have interactions with the Syracuse Police Department, to have the ability to seek a meeting with them, just like the court system provides a meeting in order to resolve matters. So we would like to reiterate the fact that we believe that that would help facilitate quality relationships between the community and the department, and we would encourage that to be also part of this reinvention, reimagined plan. And we just urge the council to fully look at those previous recommendations that have been provided by the CRB as it relates to the body-worn camera policy and additional policies. And we thank you for your time. And, if the CRB can be available at any time, we would greatly appreciate being included in any more draft policies and any more conversations as it relates to policing. And that is the end of our comments. Thank you for your time.
Perfect timing, Ms. Relaford. Thank you. Ann Williams, you're our next speaker. Is Ann on the call?
It doesn't appear she's on at this time. We do have another speaker. Brian, would you tell her who's up next?
Sure, President Hudson, Barry Gawanter would like to be our next speaker.
All righty, 3 minutes, Barry. You're muted. Barry, you're muted.
Barry, you're muted. I'm working on getting you unmuted. One second. Barry, hold down your space bar when you speak. That should unmute you. We still can't hear you.
Barry, sometimes you turn off your sound on your computer. Can you check your computer screen and make sure your sound is on? Okay. Unfortunately, we've unmuted you on this end. We don't know what the problem is. President Hudson, while Barry's trying to figure that out, we can move to another speaker if you want. We could try to
Yes,
resolve that.
if Pastor Collette came on, Pastor Collette Matthews.
Is that it, Brian? No, George. Okay. Let her know who it is.
President Hudson, George Kunkel would like to speak next. It doesn't appear that Colette is on the meeting yet.
All righty, so we'll go to George.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So first, thanks to the council for holding this public hearing. I've been involved sort of coming to these community forums since they started last month, read the plan, and just have some general overall comments. I personally am a resident of Syracuse and also a member of SPARC and the People's Agenda for Policing. The main question I want to ask to the council members as they think about voting on this is what this plan is actually going to change about policing in Syracuse. And I ask that hopefully from the perspective of someone who hasn't been involved in this process, from someone who doesn't know necessarily the ins and outs of what additional hours of training for officers are going to do, who maybe isn't going to come in contact with the new director of community engagement. And the way that we at SPARC have been thinking about these questions is in relation to the size, scope, and power of the police in Syracuse. In terms of the size, the budget of SPD has not been changed at all by this plan. There is some language in there around participatory budgeting, but I would encourage everyone to look up what participatory budgeting actually is, and you'll find that the budgeting tool outlined is actually just about budgeting transparency, which is not actually participatory. That just should be part of good government. In terms of the power of SPD in the city, the accountability process has not changed at all. SPD still controls the entire accountability process. And we're seeing a real-time demonstration of the fact that the union can stop any type of change from happening, as small as passing out business cards for the Right to Know Act. The plan doesn't address any of those power structures. I do, if I have enough time here, want to talk mostly about the scope of police in Syracuse and the scope of what exactly the police are responsible for doing in this city. So I'm going to try and do something with my screen and hopefully people can see. I recently request to the Onondaga County Department of Emergency Communications for all of the 911 calls that dispatched SPD officers for the year 2019. The total was over 130,000 calls dispatching SPD officers. Hopefully you can see in the pie chart I've displayed that it's approximately 40% non-criminal calls, just over 20% traffic-related calls. Now, the 9% you see that's highlighted in red has to do with violent crime. What I did there to account for the fact that some people might say, oh, how are you categorizing these data, was I expanded the federal definition of violent crime when they look into the data statistics on how you count crime. I expanded that from just murder, just aggravated assault, just rape to include all types of assault, all types of sexual offenses, any type of shots fired incident. So that 9% is actually a higher number than other people might get when they look at this data. So my question is, when we have spent the past 7-8 months since the summer talking about changing how we think about policing, we had an executive order from the mayor commit to looking into alternatives to policing that explicitly mentioned things like noise violations, things like traffic stops. It talked about mental health calls as well, but we haven't heard really anything in the means of alternative response other than this partnership with Liberty Resources, which in reality is still a dual response model, is still sending police officers to the scene of mental health calls. It's still giving them discretion of when to call in behavioral health professionals. And as we saw in Rochester with the recent video circulating of a 9-year-old child being pepper sprayed, handcuffed, and thrown into a police car, police officers aren't always the best judge of when to call in behavioral health professionals.
George, I hate to interrupt you, but you're beeping behind me. So if you have anything in writing that you can send to us, we would appreciate it.
Happy to do so. I'm happy to talk to anyone else who would like to speak more about these issues. Thanks for the time to speak here.
Thank you.
Barry, are you able to speak now? It sounded like I heard something coming from you.
Oh, I tested my mic. Can you hear me now? Is that a yes?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, I got nods of the head. So, first of all, I am speaking as an individual, not with any particular affiliation. The plan talks about dealing with officer misconduct through internal affairs.
Is that lady's cat up there?
I would like to ask about conduct that does not rise to the bar of misconduct per se, but is still wrong and further destructive of police community relations. Most of the demeanor issues and routine abuses of power and discretion fall in that category, which leads me to my second point. The plan really doesn't talk about improving supervision of officers in the field. It talks about supervisors having engaged in informal coaching and counseling, but clearly that's not been enough to deal with the officers who demean people and abuse their authority. I suggest that SPD should be pushed to incorporate a higher level of non-punitive action, which I might call constructive correction, to address such destructive behaviors which may be legal but not necessary. This would have to happen on scene, on shift, and be aimed at getting officers to see that other choices can and or should be made in similar situations. The plan also talks about the new use of force policy as if it's a working thing. It is not. It has not been implemented yet, and officers have not been transitioned to its guidance because they've not trained officers in its limits. I think this is misleading. The plan also acknowledges that the early warning function of the internal affairs software is not being used. This really surprised me. This was purchased during the time of the last chief, and the plan does not fully commit to utilizing this function. This is an important function, and I suggest that the flags that the system could generate should not be triggered only by complaints or uses of force, but other indicators, such as when there are charges of obstruction of governmental administration, disorderly conduct, and resisting in conjunction with the use of force, or when there's no other charge. I would also suggest that the police look at the field training process and the selection of field training officers to take steps to avoid that process contradicting the training that officers have in the academy. I strongly suggest also adding Google Translate or a similar program to the SPD website. I'm thrilled that you're looking into integrating Voyance for on-demand remote interpreting, but the website is not accessible to people who utilize other languages than English, other written languages. And although Google Translate is far from perfect, it is a step towards accessibility. I
Barry?
also, yes,
I hate to cut you off, but if you have anything in writing, would you send it to us?
I would be happy to. My last suggestion is please change the terminology of emotionally disturbed person call to a mental health crisis call to begin the change in thinking from somebody who has a defect to somebody who is struggling with a health issue.
Thank you, Barry. Peter McCarthy.
Thank you. Am I on?
Yes.
Thanks. I'm not speaking as a member of the Citizen Review Board, but as a citizen with some experience, I think is relevant. A lot of the points that Barry and George both made are relevant and important. I don't want to talk about what's in the plan. I think there's a lot of good elements in there. I spent about 15 years working with school districts and school buildings, writing state required plans for school improvement. And there's two kinds of plans, the ones that get done and the ones that don't. Most of them don't. You can write a great plan and then in many, many cases, nothing happens with it. What's not in this plan yet, except for a couple of references to pit stops and checkpoints, is how will it be monitored and how will it be supported? How much training will be provided? And Barry mentioned a couple of important elements of that, but how much ongoing training, monitoring, and supervision will happen specifically tied to the goals and objectives in this plan. And somebody's got to be responsible for that. Somebody with the authority of the mayor's office, not within the SPD, but with oversight authority for the department to make sure that all the elements of the plan are not only monitored, but there's support and training provided. And I don't know where that's going to come from, but without it, nothing will happen.
Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to go through our list. I don't see anyone else that has registered. So is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I know Ann Williams requested to sign up. I don't know if she's in the meeting, if someone can see her.
I've called Ann and I don't see her.
Okay, sorry.
TJ, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you tell us what your name is, please?
Hi, my name is TJ. I'm a member of the People's Agenda for Policing. I'll start my video. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm reading through like the accountability piece, because since the executive order, we've seen, despite the executive order and the commitment to implement the new use of force policy, we still saw multiple instances where like some young person was brutalized by an officer after driving some car. Like, we've still seen multiple instances of police brutality since we've even started these conversations like months ago and the year before that. So my question is, given that the whole point of the executive order was to reimagine how we do this, I think it's important that when we talk about accountability, we have to talk about it from the lens of what haven't we done in terms of accountability yet. And this plan doesn't really include anything that we haven't done yet. So an example of something that would be transformative would be, say, okay, now we're actually going to be clear and committed to, these are the thresholds of when an officer will be fired. So it's not it's on the community to say, hey, that was wrong. We publicly shared with the community what the threshold is, and we're all in agreement with that threshold. In addition, to committing to not only hear the recommendations of the Citizen Review Board, but a commitment to actually enforcing those recommendations from the Citizen Review Board. Lastly, I just want to say, as part of the executive order, let me read it really quick. Part of the plan was supposed to be specifically about all the modifications, modernizations, innovations, specific strategies, policies, and procedures tailored to the specific needs of the community. But a lot of this plan is very vague and doesn't really talk about the how things will be implemented. It's just, oh, we're kind of going to do this, something around this, but doesn't actually get into this is the specific mechanism in which it will be implemented, because we know where a lot of these plans fall short is on the implementation. And that ultimately hurts the people who are affected the most, which is Black and brown people in this community. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
TJ, we're recording this meeting, so we need your last name for the record. Could you give us your last name?
Davis.
Thank you, TJ. We're going to go back through again, and I'm going to see if Miss Ann Williams is on yet. No. Pastor Colette Matthews, are you on? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Well, Barry, you had your hand up. So would you like to say something else briefly? 2 minutes.
My voice is not the most important one, but I wanted to just let people know that Bishop Colette Matthews Carter is on her way about to join the meeting. That's really it.
Oh, okay, because I saw that in the chat. So, okay, thank you. And until the bishop comes, hopefully, is there anyone else on the line? Because I see quite a few community people. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. You know I'm gonna throw some humor in there. You want
Hi.
to sing?
Hi, my name is Cynthia Brunson. I am a member of the CRB, and I don't have anything specifically that I'd like to say. Just hi to everyone and stay safe.
I don't know. We had never had this situation where we didn't have speakers lined up. So
Bananas.
they want me to sing. No,
So we're waiting for Carla Matthews.
yeah, we're waiting for Bishop Matthews and Ann Williams to see if they're coming on. And until that time, the chat
You can
is
sing.
open.
You can sing, Madam President, if you want to. Go ahead and sing till they come.
We're not doing that. Okay, I'm just gonna wait them out.
Okay.
Hang on. Okay, we were waiting for Bishop Matthews, and At this point, I'm going to give 2 more minutes to wait for her to come on and see if there's anyone else that would like to speak. And if not, we will close the public hearing. Yes, Barry.
Sorry, Helen, but I do have something else that I can offer. As I said earlier, I was thrilled that the police are going to explore adding voyants. However, as I said in one of the forums, having an on-demand interpreter program on a phone app or a tablet is great. However, that's not enough. There also has to be training for officers in when it's necessary to use it, how to work with an interpreter, and also how to recognize and communicate what kind of interpreter you need based not only on country, but also on ethnic group, and also based on other dynamics such as gender. I've also just heard that Bishop Colette is trying to get in and can't get in. I'm about to call her to try to coach her through the system unless somebody else from the city would like to do that.
We don't see her trying to log on. We're not letting anyone not log on, so she's not appearing.
I'm texting her now, link on city's calendar on front page. I just added it's on the left side.
So Barry, would you contact?
I am here.
Okay, you're up.
Thank you, Helen, for the patience.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, Bishop, and you actually get 3 minutes.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much. I apologize for my tardiness. But the Syracuse Onondaga County NAACP, we appreciate this opportunity to comment on the Syracuse Police Department Reform and Reinvention Plan. We have thoroughly reviewed the reform plan and find it appealing in its presentation. But it is obvious that you have put great effort into this preparation, as demonstrated by the many activities and findings including therein. In addition, we are grateful that the reform plan includes the work of many people and organizations whose efforts we hope will be valued and considered during the process of reform. The development of a plan to reform the composition and policies of the city police no doubt require our citizens to trust that the effort to do so is sincere and transparent. We must also come together and ensure the best strategies and ideas are utilized to build a public safety system that will do better to safeguard our families and communities in a fair and impartial manner. Most importantly, we must demand the process of reform is cooperative, consistent, and without fabrication. That said, in addition to commenting on the plan, we feel it is our obligation to the community to set the record straight with regard to the relationship between the Syracuse Onondaga NAACP and the Syracuse Police Department. In particular, throughout the presentation of the reform plan, the NAACP is referred to as a partner and held to be in partnership with the Syracuse Police Department. Respectfully, we are hoping that this relationship does in fact develop. A partnership is a relationship where cooperation and trust must go hand in hand, where two parties agree to work together and share information for the good of the community and the citizens of this community. As such, we cannot be in partnership with local police until we can trust that they are performing in good faith and honoring their pledge to eradicate biased decision-making against people of color. Consequently, over the last years, the NAACP has attempted to bring their concerns to the leaders of the Syracuse Police Department, oftentimes falling on deaf ears. The NAACP has requested that the police chief meet with the executive board following the Gray Street incident. When it was asked to hear about the discipline of the officers responsible for the incident, the NAACP was ignored and the lightest level of discipline was provided to the officers involved. Most recently, we were disregarded following a United States District Court ruling that severely weakened the shield of the city police and fire consent decree. The decision held that present hiring process invoked by the city to rectify the demographic imbalance of the police force is no longer protected by the decree, and open to the police force is no longer protected by the decree and open to civil litigation from non-minorities and feel aggrieved by the process. And although the Syracuse Police Department and the city administration was aware that the NAACP was in contact with, I'm sorry, I'm losing my place here because I'm trying to rush. But I'll close with this. In addition to referring to the Syracuse Onondaga County NAACP as a partner, the reform plan recognizes our organization for its service in providing the SPD with constituents to support diverse hiring. This is simply not accurate. To the contrary, the NAACP has been a strong advocate for the community, warning of the flawed and discriminatory hiring practices within the police department. We have publicly denounced the improper hiring processes that allow for biased decisions resulting in the disqualification of qualified minority candidates. The NAACP has submitted letters to the administration voicing its concern for the hiring process and strongly recommending change to include a review of personnel who handle interviews, background checks, and mental health assessments.
Bishop.
Going forward, can I just close with this? Going forward, the NAACP truly would like to work in partnership with the administration and the Syracuse Police Department on a range of issues. However, this partnership will not come on the heels of those who have been victims of discrimination and abuse. The NAACP must be confident, along with the community, that the effort for reform is real and trustworthy and not just statements in executive orders with little or no follow-through on this ground. We look forward to working with you and your administration on building this trust as we move forward, reforming and reinventing the Syracuse Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed and the legislation will be considered during the regular order of business. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.